Missouri Times, chilling in the heat, Scott Faughn on the beat, feeling so complete. From the cities to small towns, we keep it real. Making noise in the game, can't deny the thrill. The show me state where the stories unfold. Politicians and scandals that never get sold. Scott Faughn, the Missouri Times, breaking the news, shining light on corruption, exposing the blues. In the heartland, where the truth is hard to find. Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John, they're the ones to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
It is the BJ Show. Today's date is the 24th of September, 2025. This is the A Block. I am Brad Hildebrand, a proud American. That is John Combest, a proud conservative Republican. Right, John? Did I get this correct?
No, it's Chinese communist, Brad.
You're a Chi-Com. Okay, before we get into the show and we officially start things off with John's Top 3, I have to discuss something that happened yesterday. After we did the show yesterday, I was leaving the studio. And as I walked out of the entrance into the parking lot, I was attacked by a man who kept yelling, "What's the frequency, Kenneth? What's the frequency, Kenneth?" And he grabbed me by my beard, spun me around in the parking lot, and said something to the effect that, "I ain't going away." I'm thinking to myself, who the hell was that, John?
Who could that possibly be? Would it have been the man that flaked on us in C Block yesterday?
I have no idea, which is sort of interesting. Because
Yeah, at some point today, maybe at the end of A Block, I doubt we'll have time, but maybe at some point we can mention it, Brad, because you and I talked off the air yesterday after our show was done, and after you and I got off the phone, two Democrats with knowledge of the situation texted me, Brad.
Was it?
And by the way, we were correct. His name is pronounced Boesch. So
Boesch.
Let's start there.
Okay.
Yeah. So Mr. Boesch, who, for folks who are just joining us, welcome. Brad had accepted an invitation. Excuse me. Mr. Boesch wanted to know if he could be on our show. And Brad had an interview scheduled at 7:45 yesterday. And Jonathan Boesch, who was formerly the leader of the St. Louis County Democrats, flaked on the show.
Yeah.
And then when I got some context from Democrats afterwards, Brad, I learned a little bit more about Mr. Bosch's dismissal and, you know, maybe personality-wise, why he chose to flake on you.
Well,
but you know what? That's not in the top 3, though, Brad.
Quick recap. We talked about him on Monday because the story was what the Post-Dispatch reporter got the FOIA or whatever it was, the Sunshine Law request, and got the video that had been passed along to the county police. Wasn't that of this altercation?
That's correct, yeah.
And that's why this story came back into focus again, because it's almost a year ago. It was in October of 24. And after the show on Monday, I give my phone number out on the air all the time, 314-280-8880. Mr. Boesch texted me at that number and requested to be on the show. And I said, fine, let's do it Tuesday, 7:45. And then I don't know if we still want to talk about this.
We should probably, out of respect to him, not verbalize what he texted you. I guess maybe he didn't know what our show was about or something, but he said something pretty offensive to you.
I don't care if he knew what the show was about or if he didn't. What he texted me was, shall we say, highly inappropriate.
Right. I think we've learned that if he was working at a public institution, he probably would have gotten fired for those comments.
Yeah, probably. No kidding. Probably so. Okay, let's get on with the show at hand.
Yes, let's do it.
This is the Brad and John Show. We start off with John Combest. Combest puts together this incredible website, done it for 23 plus years. We're coming up on your anniversary, aren't we? Isn't it sometime like, when is it? Is it?
You know, I don't make a big deal about it, but folks that know.
But you're not going to say?
No, of course not. No.
Okay. We're coming up on the 24th anniversary, which nobody knows when it is because the people that know, but the people that don't know. Anyway, we're coming up at the 24th anniversary of this guy every single day in his life putting up this important information. It's like the Drudge Report, the old Drudge Report when it was good, not the new Drudge Report, which is not so good. It was like the old Drudge Report, but for the state of Missouri. And we bring in this guy right here. Your name, sir?
I'm Casey Kasem.
And he starts it off with...
In third place...
There's no reason in the world why Missouri, and specifically Washington, Missouri, can't lead the charge for our energy dominance here in this country. That's a quote from Missouri Senator Eric Schmitt. Schmitt was in Washington yesterday, Brad. It was a rainy day. It was a little dreary, but the outlook was sunny for folks in WashMo. A headline from the Washington Missourian, which you can find at Missourian.com. Transformational expansion. WEG breaks ground on $77 million project. Jonathan Riley of the Missourian writes, WEG Transformers USA broke ground Tuesday on a $77 million expansion project at one of its Washington facilities that is expected to increase production capacity by 50% and add at least 50 new jobs. U.S. Senator Eric Schmitt was part of a contingent of local, state, and national leaders who participated in the groundbreaking ceremony at WEG's production facility on Powell's Drive. Brad, that's spelled Pauwels. Do you know where that is?
Oh, I know exactly where that's at. That's the company that makes transformers out there.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Brad. So Eric Schmitt went on to talk about how there's a huge backlog. And again, this is one of these topics, Brad, that you're way more hip to than I am. Schmitt says there's currently a 2 to 4 year backlog for transformers. Schmitt points out that this is a growth industry and there's more jobs to come in the Washington, Missouri area. We would also note here, I think probably my favorite quote besides that of Schmitt, because Schmitt had a pretty bold quote there. My favorite quote came from Ameren, Missouri President Mark Burke. He says, I don't attend many groundbreakings at all. This is a big deal. It really is. So Burke says they have a deal with WEG for transformers, and they've provided more than, I guess WEG has provided more than 24 transformers for Ameren over the past few years. And Mark Burke says, we expect to continue to grow and develop, and so we plan to continue the partnership with WEG for years into the future. So this seems to be, Brad, a huge capital investment in the WashMo area. 50 new jobs is nothing to sneeze at. We should also point out that another speaker included the Missouri Department of Economic Development Deputy Director, Kayla Kukulhan. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. My apologies if I am not. And she says, when companies like WEG choose to expand in Missouri, it shows confidence in our state's talented workforce, strong business climate, and collaborative spirit. Your decision to grow here means more good-paying jobs, more opportunities for families, and the continued economic momentum for the region. Anyway, Brad, great headline and good news for WashMo.
A lot of manufacturing in WashMo. Parker Hannafin, which bought the Sporlan Valve Company years ago, which does a lot of HVAC stuff. A lot of high-tech machining, tool and die work, and the Powell's transformer plant out there. Matter of fact, if you spend any time in WashMo at all, you will see flatbed tractor trailers hauling transformers east on 100 to get onto 44 to wherever they go in the country. So yeah, big operation, and we're talking transformers. We're talking multi-ton transformers. We're not talking like, for the most part, the ones that put on if you got above ground service at your house, the ones that stick on the electric pole. These are big monster ones. If you go behind buildings and stuff like that, like big monster buildings, you'll see these transformers on concrete pads. That's what they produce out there for the most part. They do some of the smaller stuff, but they do big stuff as well too. How's that for knowing my WashMo? And by the way,
hey, you do know that. You know energy and you know WashMo. And now, wait a minute, Brad. Because of your work formerly as a police dispatcher back in the Car 54 Where Are You days, you're going to really love story number 2.
Well, John, if I can give one footnote to that, there's a secret mission that I was informed about that Senator Schmitt did not talk about. What
was that, Brad?
Not too far from the Powell's transformer plant is the big, monstrous Missouri publishing company plant. And what a lot of people don't know is the real reason the Hoffmans bought the Missourian is they're going to essentially transform that into a data center. And they're going to throw out all those old, cranky old printing presses nobody uses anymore and put in a data center there. But
yeah, they've been working with Kara Spencer
Right.
and Dave Schatz on that.
Right.
And Brad, I'm sure you're aware because you keep up on this, but the Hoffman family of companies is having one of their annual meetings this week right here in St. Louis, Brad. I believe they're actually going to WashMo this week.
and they're going to show all the things they owned once upon a time and they sold off, which is sort of interesting. Okay.
Yeah, which is not the Missourian because they've already significantly improved the operations at the Missourian, Brad. Maybe they can deliver you some Oberweis and you can eat it in your car.
Up a notch to number 2.
Number 2, John.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I missed that cue, and I appreciate not having my eardrums blown out. Thank you for that, Brad. Ooh, if you listen closely, Brad, you can hear it. All the Federalists say could have had him any day. They only let him go so long. Boo-noo-noo-noo-noo-noo, out of kindness, I suppose. That's Willie Nelson and Merle Haggard. That's Pancho and Lefty. That was one of my dad's favorite songs. Headline from the Midwest Newsroom via St. Louis Public Radio. A woman named Naomi Delka-Miller. She writes a piece, Brad. As ICE partnerships spread in the Midwest, incentives rise, and civil rights concerns deepen. Brad, underneath the Biden administration, there was a sensible relationship between immigration officials at ICE and local law enforcement. There were only 3, count them, 3 agreements between ICE and local law enforcement that would somehow give these local law enforcement officers the opportunity to question potential illegal immigrants. But thanks to Donald Trump, by the end of January, there were 135 of these agreements. And from January to September, that number increased from 135 to more than 1,000. And that's good news for Missouri, Brad. And I'll pull the quote here about Missouri data and what it means. In Missouri today, 53 Missouri Highway Patrol troopers have been trained under an ICE program. They've been trained to talk to people who might be, Brad, they might be here a little less than legally. Anyway, this is terrible, Brad. This is an example of how the federal government under Donald Trump is deputizing local law enforcement and giving them training. We don't need that, Brad. We don't need to dump more money into the federal law enforcement officials that are going after immigrants. Anyway, this piece that's on St. Louis Public Radio today, again, based out of Midwest Newsroom, that's the collaboration of progressive content creators that get together and say, okay, there's some terrible right-wing stuff happening in Nebraska. Let's syndicate it all around the Midwest. It's actually a pretty good idea. So, Brad, the sad thing here is that we have the feds training local law enforcement. And we also, as you're aware, Brad, because we've discussed it many times on the air, there's these programs where the feds, they pay local jails to keep immigrants. Don't you think that's terrible, Brad?
Well, hold on a minute. Let me clear my voice here. Okay, the interesting part of this is the feds already pay local jails for for citizens who are being tried in the federal court system. Did you know this?
Yeah, you've mentioned that many times on the air, Brad.
Right. Years ago, when I interviewed Sean Hayes, who was the wonderkind banker in St. Louis who got in trouble and ended up staying in jail, he talked about he spent 14 months in the Warren County Jail because he was being tried federally, and they don't have, in the St. Louis area, I don't think they have any federal prisons. So what they do is they contract with the county and the city municipalities that will give them jail space. And I'm going like, okay, no big deal. So why is this any big news? You know,
you would think that it's the same concept. Well, because it allows the left, Brad, to say, can you believe that they're using these local communities to house these immigrants?
Well,
now, Brad, we all know that Mr. Hayes, if he was on bad behavior in Warren County, they'd make him go work at the assessor's office.
yes.
They'd make him deal with the Brad Hildebrands of the world.
No.
One more note on story number 2, Brad. I know we're getting short on time here. It's that, I'm a fan of going to the City of Chesterfield police website and reading their police reports. I like to see what kind of old people fall for, this is Microsoft support. I like to see how many old people are falling for those scams, or how many urbanites are coming to West County to steal from the outlet malls, things like that. Brad, I went yesterday to the Chesterfield police reports, and I pulled up the police report from September 22nd. That was Monday. And I see that in Chesterfield, a woman named Edie Mendez Lopez was stopped traveling in excess of 100 miles per hour. She was a 25-year-old little Latina spicy number. Maybe she was little. She could have been fat. I don't know. A lot of Mexican chicks like to eat a lot. Anyway, she was driving in excess of 100 miles per hour. Immigration and Customs Enforcement detained the driver for suspected immigration violation. Amazing we haven't seen that in mainstream St. Louis media. Then one tick down, Brad. Police pulled over Feliciano Cristobal Osorio. She's a 48-year-old spicy Latina. During a traffic stop for expired plates, subject provided false identity information and fraudulent identity documents. Immigration and Customs Enforcement detained her for immigration violation. So, Brad, isn't this unique that we have local NPR and Midwest Newsroom talking about how terrible it is for local law enforcement to get involved in immigration? La viva la raza! Andale! But somehow in Chesterfield, we have these alleged illegals speeding, driving around, not having proper plates. It would seem that local law enforcement could use a little help, don't you think, Brad?
Well, John, you're missing part of the story. She was
what am I missing?
The reason she got pulled over is she was doing 100 miles an hour in the left lane, but Adam Schnelting was behind her trying to pass her, and she wouldn't yield the left lane, so he called the Chesterfield police, and they came and arrested her. That was the whole deal.
Brad, if I was him, I would just give you $1,000 like you were Turning Point USA and be on my way. Can we get to story number 1?
The number 1.
Go.
Brad, who do you think, after all your years in the radio industry, who do you think in Missouri has the quote-unquote nicest radio studio in Missouri?
NPR. Okay, WMU. They have the nicest.
Probably guess that, wouldn't you think, based on the taxpayer investment? No, I know that we're short on time, so I'll wrap this up quickly. Catherine Hanaway, AG Catherine Hanaway, was in Kansas City yesterday, and she was with our friend Pete Mundo. Mundo in the morning, Pete Mundo in the morning. And Pete prompted her at the very end of the interview and said, hey, is this not the nicest radio offices you've ever been in? And Catherine said, yes, they are the nicest offices. Brad, folks can go hear Catherine talk about her relationship with KC Mayor Quentin Lucas, where she got to know Quentin from, what her relationship is like. Talked about Gabe Gore versus Kim Gardner in St. Louis. What's the difference between those two? And I think perhaps most importantly, folks can hear Catherine say that Missouri state legislators, the one thing they really need to do for crime, how about a truth in sentencing law? How about we stop this nonsense that people get sentenced and then they appeal and then somehow they get their sentence knocked down to something negligible? Why don't we have a truth in sentencing law here in the state of Missouri, Brad?
I have no idea. And I will tell you this, John, just funny you mentioned, I was in St. Louis, downtown St. Louis. I was at the Park Plaza building down there on Olive, just west of Tucker. And I drove by the KMOX studios, the Y98 and 97.1 studios. And there's a big sign on the side that said, Andrew Bailey Office Suite for Lease.
Oh, Brad, you love the fact he was on there every day. Here's 60 seconds of a recommendation in our last minute of this segment for Catherine Hanaway. She just hired a brand new chief of staff, Maddie McMillian Green. Brad, we've mentioned Maddie's husband before on the show, the great Brad Green, veteran of the Tom Dempsey administration, Missouri Chamber, a whole host of things. But this isn't LinkedIn. We're not going to read both their resumes. Maddie is the new chief of staff. And I think Maddie and her team have, let's say, a bifurcated strategy that they need to approach going into next year. And that is do serious stuff. Focus on crime. Don't put out a lot of press releases about seizing, Indonesian bank accounts to teach the communists a lesson or whatever. Do serious things on one hand. And on the other hand, they need to do right-wing radio. They need to be on Mark Cox. They need to go on 93.3. They need to do Drew Shelton and Dan Strauss's show, do The Reckoning with Ryan Haidt. They need to go to Kansas City. She needs to keep talking to the Elijah Haars and the Nick Reeds of the world. Everything on the conservative and even right-wing spectrum, Catherine needs to keep doing. Let people hear her in those media markets and that right wing of the party. And then on the policy side, just do serious stuff. It'll reduce the likelihood that you get some ridiculous, annoying competitor from the right during the primary. You still might get one, but they won't be taken as seriously if you continue to appear on these right-wing places, say right-wing stuff, and do serious policy stuff. That's my 90 seconds of advice for Catherine Hanaway.
But she won't come on our show, though, right?
Brad, we don't have guests on the show. Thank you. And I would never, ever subject Catherine Hanaway, who's a serious woman who I've known for 1996, so almost 30 years I've known Catherine. I would never subject her to being radio interview.
John, you're getting a little funky there, and it's not you, it's the technical quality. So let's take a break, and can I get you to redial for me? A little.
Absolutely.
Okay, we'll take a break. We'll be right back.